Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Come on in. The water is fine. We will be starting shortly, but feel free to adjust your speakers and get comfortable. We look forward to chatting with you afterwards.
Remember, my clock says it's right on the hour. Do you want to start, or what do you think?
Sure, let's do it. We want to respect everybody's time. And again, we are going to be recording this and you will receive a link. So fear not, if you do come in a few minutes late, we will get that sent to you. So yes, please, Maggie, take it away.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, welcome everybody. It's so nice to have you with us. Deborah and I are delighted to be presenting to you a brief overview on exploring the mindset, the entrepreneurial mindset profile. So let's dive right in and talk about the different applications of the EMP. There are quite a few. We use the EMP in a number of leadership development programs, especially those that have a focus on innovation, creativity, growth, or strategic direction. We use it, as do many of the practitioners in our team of practitioners, in one-on-one coaching and team building programs, using it for workforce development programs, community-based programs for aspiring entrepreneurs, university classes and institutional benchmarking. And then there are a number of research streams on entrepreneurial mindset that are using the EMP. So as of May 11th, so as of yesterday, 28,200 EMPs have been completed, and we have over 500 practitioners representing 38 countries and US territories who are certified and using the EMP. So an important question is what the EMP does and what does the EMP not do? So the EMP does not produce an overall score that indicates whether you are or are not entrepreneurial. And it doesn't tell you whether you should or should not become an entrepreneur. The team at the Leadership Development Institute that designed and introduced the EMP to the market set out to discover how entrepreneurs in general differ from corporate managers, and all the ways in which they differ, the team decided to call entrepreneurial mindset. So the EMP plots your scores on 14 distinct elements of entrepreneurial mindset against our exclusive normative data for entrepreneurs and corporate managers. And then it invites you to consider the ways in which you may want to enhance one or more elements of entrepreneurial thought or action. So the tool helps you identify where you are most like entrepreneurs, and we consider those your entrepreneurial strengths. And then it invites you to consider how those strengths are working for you and where, if at all, you might want to move the needle. So there are many ways to be entrepreneurial. Everyone is different. The team who researched and created the EMP early in their process concluded that entrepreneurial mindset is multifaceted. It's not an either-or proposition or a single number like an IQ, but more like a profile of various traits and abilities. So we have a quick poll and a question for you, and we'll introduce that poll now and ask you what your thoughts are. Is entrepreneurial mindset purely genetic? Is it 100% learned, or is it both? Give you just a minute to respond. We've got 7 responses so far, 8, 9.
Well, we're up to 78%.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and end the poll. Thanks for participating. And in fact, 100% of those of you who responded concluded the same thing that our research indicated, that some elements that distinguish entrepreneurs from non-entrepreneurs are probably a little more stable or hardwired, and others are more likely to be easy to develop. So those that are stable or hardwired, we call those the personality traits. And those include things like risk acceptance, independence, preference for limited structure, and others. So could we teach someone who is more comfortable, for example, in a lower risk environment, to recognize situations in which they could take greater risk? Yes, we probably could, and it may be helpful for them if they wanted to be more entrepreneurial, but we probably wouldn't change their overall orientation toward risk. And so while you can move the needle on the 7 components of the EMP that are considered personality elements, and we have suggestions on how you can do that, we find that these scales, the personality scales, have greater implications for fit in terms of the industry that might be the best fit, the type of endeavor that might be the best fit, the role that might be the best fit, the function that might be the best fit. So very rich discussions develop from these results. And then these skills-based scales on the EMP, there are more implications for what people might want to focus on to develop. So take idea generation, for example. There are plenty of techniques designed to help people become more comfortable and adept at brainstorming. And we think that with enough training and intention and practice, those behaviors can become very well versed, habitual, and you can really develop these skills. So here's a visual of the 14 scales that make up the EMP. And you may notice that the final scale, interpersonal sensitivity, is italicized. And the reason for that is, of the 14 scales in the instrument, this is the one on which entrepreneurs on average score themselves lower than do corporate managers. And so compared to corporate managers, they describe themselves as a bit more abrasive, perhaps harder to work with, and there are probably lots of reasons for that. We think it's probably because they may be a little more task focused, and because corporate managers are rewarded for interpersonal sensitivity, and it can actually be a derailer if they don't show sensitivity to the people they work with. So on each of these 14 scales, entrepreneurs on average have statistically significant differences from corporate managers, the interpersonal sensitivity scale being the one where they score significantly lower. For those of you interested in learning about the development of the tool, the validity studies, the statistics, etc., this article is available to you, and we can certainly make the link to the article available as well. We've got a second of 2 polls now that we'd like to get your thoughts on. And so the question is, for whom is entrepreneurial mindset important? Is it important for managers, entrepreneurs, students, everyone? What are your thoughts? Looks like we've got a consensus in this group. We'll go ahead and end the poll and show you the results. And yes, well, we would agree in general, but also we would point out that it all depends on your context. So if we were talking about the founder of the company, I think we'd all agree quickly, yes, entrepreneurial mindset is relevant. But what about, for example, an air traffic controller? Would you want your air traffic controller to have an entrepreneurial mindset? Well, I would certainly want my, excuse me, air traffic controller to be high on execution. So we always ask the question with our clients, which ones of these scales are most important to you? How would they help you achieve your own professional goals and meet your own professional challenges? Excuse me. And then we look at the data and explore with them what it's telling us. So we go into any debrief or coaching session with a very open mind about what's important for each client or student, and we support them as they have their own reaction and insights around the data. So while context is everything, we are going to suggest that for many organizational leaders, it can be very helpful to utilize an entrepreneurial mindset, especially when there's an organizational need to drive growth and innovation. We've actually used the EMP with a number of nonprofit organizations and government entities who have found it particularly helpful when aiming to increase the innovation and growth in their organizations. Let's take a look at the instrument itself, and we'll look quickly at a sample report just to give you a feel for it. So each of the reports, when people receive it, the first page of the report gives them a one-line definition of first the personality scales, and we have a much more detailed definition that everybody gets access to in our development guide, and I'll show you that in a few moments. After they are able to see the definitions, they then can see how their scores visually compare to the entrepreneurial norm group, which is the green line here, and to the corporate manager norm group, which is the blue line here, the red line being, in this case, Susan Sample's results. So what do we see here in terms of highs and lows? We see that in Susan's case, limited structure is probably a significant entrepreneurial strength for her that might be worth exploring. Also, we see need to achieve appears to be quite a strength for Susan. So we would talk about that with her. And while high scores can be considered strengths and may be leveraged in pursuit of important goals, low scores are not necessarily a bad thing. They may be irrelevant to the individual. So for example, we see in her case, she's low on independence. Is that a problem? It really depends on her perspective around this. She may say, you know what? I realize I like working with teams and I enjoy being part of a thriving team, which is a lot of the content on the independence scale. So she may not be bothered by it. She may find that it has served her well and that she doesn't want to worry herself about it. So each of the low scores, we keep a very open mind to explore with the individual how relevant it is. And the scores are always interpreted within the context of an individual's current reality, as well as their future expectations. And for those who are working in organizations, also in terms of what the organization is expecting of them or asking from them. Now, let me briefly describe what it required to be included in our norm groups. To be included in the corporate manager norm group, individuals had to not own a business, not co-own a business, have a salaried position, and have at least 2 direct reports. So all of that had to be the case for them to be included in our norm group. We have over 1,000 corporate managers, 1,047 to be exact, in that norm group. And then to be included in the entrepreneur norm group, the individual had to own or co-own a business, and they had to answer yes to the question, do you consider yourself an entrepreneur? And they could not be a full-time student. And we currently have 1,702 people in that entrepreneurial norm group. So continuing on with what does the report include, there are all the details here about how individuals responded to each of the individual questions, which is really a nice feature. For those of you who've worked with other assessment tools, you are aware that many assessment tools don't include the actual items. And that's probably for proprietary reasons, but our design team felt it would be important for people's value and the richness of their interpretation to be able to see how they responded to each individual item. 31 of the 72 items are reverse scored, and that's what the parentheses and italics indicate about those items, that they are reverse scored, which is considered a best practice in psychometric assessment, that people have to read particularly carefully in order to respond consistently and ultimately achieve for example, the highest score possible on any of these scales. And then the asterisks that you see at the overall scale level, those indicate that the difference between the norm score and the self score is statistically significant in its difference. So moving on, we then define each of the skills scales briefly, and people can see then their visual around their strengths and potential areas they might want to develop. We see here that Susan is very high on self-confidence and optimism, and that those would be, along with future focus, strengths to consider further leveraging and what that might look like. She's also high on interpersonal sensitivity, and we would certainly explore what that low score on execution looks like and how that shows up and whether it's relevant, along with the lower score on persistence. She would then, of course, be able to look at her individual responses to the items that make up each scale, if that's useful to her. And then what's really nice here on the last page of the report, everyone who takes the report gets access to 2 excellent resources. The first one is a link to a video debrief presented by one of the 3 designers of the EMP, Dr. Jennifer Hall, and she walks the individual through a debrief experience where they can stop and then restart the video as they go along and as they reflect on their own results. And then the second link is for our EMP Development Guide, which is a rich resource with information on entrepreneurship and a lot of information about each of the scales. So I'll show you real briefly what that table of contents in the development guide looks like. There are, for each chapter on the 14 scales, you get a thorough definition of what that means, what the scale is, what it looks like when it's overplayed. Also, a number of resources if you want to strengthen any of these areas. There are development suggestions, there is reading materials, a number of references on each, along with resources on entrepreneurship in general. And then there's a very helpful action planning guide that a lot of our faculty practitioners assign to their students as part of the overall experience, that they are expected to watch that video with Dr. Jen Hall and to complete the action planning as part of it. So a variety of options for addressing low scores. One, as we said, is to decide it's not relevant to your job performance, your personal satisfaction, your place in the universe, and just forget it. You could team with somebody else or more than someone who does have complementary skills and who is high in an area where you're low. And a lot of our entrepreneurs choose to do this as they develop their teams with intention. You can, of course, use the EMP Development Guide to find resources and strategies for moving the needle on one or more scale. And you can, of course, engage with an executive coach or any practitioner with expertise in entrepreneurial mindset, or for students working with an advisor or other resources on campus to support them. So we ask you to please keep in mind that there's no single profile that captures the ideal entrepreneur, the ideal corporate leader, the ideal entrepreneurship student, or the ideal human being. It all depends on what you are aiming for, and the richness and value of the EMP feedback results lie in the unique profile of the 14 scale scores interpreted within your individual and organizational context. So there's no such thing as a good score or a bad score, a good profile or a bad profile. It all depends on what you are trying to accomplish and what you value. So what's very nice too about this particular tool is you can use it with teams and groups. We have a team report that looks to a large extent like an individual report. In this case, the red line shows the average of the entire team, a corporate team in this example, and where they show up in terms of these entrepreneurial scales. And then the group report also provides you with visibility to what's the group low score on this team that we're looking at, what's the lowest score that any individual has in any of the scales. So future focus, we see that one of the individuals scored a 2, and then one of the individuals scored as high as a 3.8. We see the average is a 3 for the total team membership, and then they can see how that relates to the corporate norm and the entrepreneurial norm. There are a number of teams with whom we have worked who have found this extremely helpful in terms of planning their focus, their development, their growth with this particular insight. We do have a resource available for those of you who work with teams and groups, and it is a package that is put together as a facilitator guide with PowerPoints and quote cards that can be used for exercises. It's a real time saver for you because it's a complete program that you can duplicate exactly, or you can use modules and build your own program. And it provides flexibility. They're ready to go exercises and pre and post workshop guidance as you use it, etc. So that's available to you for $125, or when you bundle it with your certification, it's available for $100. So there's a discount. Benefits of certification: you will learn how to interpret EMP results at both the individual and group level. You'll qualify for discounts on individual and group EMP administrations. You'll gain access to a resource-rich practitioner portal. You'll benefit from a library of resources that is continually growing for practitioners, and join a thriving community of practice with opportunities to attend and lead exclusive virtual forums. So the languages available are displayed here, with more coming. And in terms of pricing, we offer reduced rates for educators when you are working with students. We know that many of you work with students, with nonprofits, and also a number of you work with corporate leaders. It's an honor system in terms of how you pay for your administrations. We also are a nonprofit, and so it's a trust-based model, but you can see here what you pay for individual administrations and then what the group reports cost. You do need to buy the individual reports before you can run a group report. And the data pools are of interest to those of you who are doing research, and those are available that provides you with all the demographic information on the individuals who have taken the EMP under your leadership. We do have upcoming webinars that we would encourage you to look into. The next one's on June 23rd. They are very interactive. We get lots of great feedback about the experience. They are also very nice networking opportunities for those of you who are looking to build your network in entrepreneurship. And you can see the dates here. The cost here, again, educators receive a discount, a nice discount, and also discounts for government and nonprofit employees. For those of you who would like to experience the EMP, we encourage you to request a free administration. Now you are eligible to do that anytime within the next 2 weeks. We would also just remind you that we are housed within the Leadership Development Institute at Eckerd College. We have a number of world-class leadership development programs. We also are home to the Mediation Training Institute and to the Conflict Dynamics Profile, which is another proprietary instrument that's been developed by this team and is in use by thousands of organizations around the world. So all that is available to you. And we would be happy to stay on and take questions. Either please, you're invited to open your mic or use the chat box. Oops, leave that slide up. Questions from anyone? Oh, I see the chat. We got some activity going in the chat here, Deborah.
Yes, I've been writing with folks, and I did put that email address in the chat box again. So if you are interested in experiencing the EMP, you can send an email over the next 2 weeks. Also, please be aware that if you do choose to get certified, that taking the EMP is included in that experience. And we actually hold your results and do some really interesting activities that you can simulate during after certification with your students and your clients.
Yes, we do a great unveiling for you as part of our certification experience. That way you can kind of see what your own clients and students would experience, and it makes your learning opportunity even richer.
I see a hand up. I'm sorry, I don't know your first name based on your screen name, but
yeah, it's Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, thanks. This is very exciting. Yeah, my question is, you went a little bit fast, so I'm just, trying to figure out how this works in the budget. So maybe you can give me a rough figure. So let's say I decide to adopt it. I decide to get certified. I've got a group. Typically, I'll have 12 students, entrepreneurial students every year. That are expected to launch a venture. So if I did it with a group of 12 and I wanted to do it right, what's it going to cost? What's the budget going to be for that, so that they can all get their results, and I probably pull a group report and so on.
Great. So it would be $300. It sounds like you're an educator. So it would be $300 to get certified. That's a one-time fee. And then after you're certified, you can use the EMP as much or as infrequently as you like, and you would spend $25 per student to buy an assessment for each of them. But keep in mind, because we at Eckerd College developed the assessment, we definitely see the value in the students being able to do a pre and post administration. So for that same $25 per student, you would be able to administer at the beginning of the semester and then at the end. So I think you said 12 students, so it would be $25 times 12. Yep. And then if you wanted to run a group report, meaning you wanted to look collectively at the class's entrepreneurial mindset, that would be one time of $100. The group report license is $100 for educators.
Okay, and then so let's say I did all those things. Then how would I get the results to students? Is it something that's easy to print out and I hand them a hard copy, or I give them a link, or
we give you all kinds of flexibility. So once you become a practitioner, you gain access to the EMP Practitioner Portal. And it's that portal where you would load your participants, so first name, last name, email address. And then the portal actually generates the link, which is unique to each participant. It does the scoring. It holds the results. You can choose whether or not you want to immediately have the results sent to your participants, or if you want to hold them and do activities and a big reveal. That's up to you. They can download it. It's a PDF file, so you can print it, they can print it, totally up to the discretion of the practitioner.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. We look forward to having you in a certification workshop. Our next one is June 23rd.
Okay.
Deborah, there was a question that's related to what Paul was asking about. Does the group report show results for individual students within the group? So you will get, when you run a group report, you will have access to all your individual reports as well. The group report is going to show you the high and the low for everybody in the group. and it'll show you the average, but within the group report itself, you would not see the individual results, but you as the practitioner will have access to the individual results.
And then I'd like to address Raphael Herzberg's question regarding the Brazilian market. So we are very much in the Brazilian market. We do have an EMP master trainer there, which means it's somebody who can not only use the EMP in any of the languages we offer, but is also able to certify a practitioner in Portuguese for Brazil. So I would be more than happy to talk with you offline about running a program. By all means, you can reach me at that same email address if you're interested in taking the EMP, but that e-mindset profile, and I'll put it back in the chat, at eckerd.edu to discuss further. All right, what other questions can we answer? Feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like. The cost for individual reports, it looks like there was a question here. So we have 3 different pricing tiers, as Maggie had mentioned, depending upon whether you are a standard coach, consultant, corporate leader, depends on, to whom you are administering. So it's generally $40 as a practitioner to purchase. However, we do offer volume discounts if you're buying 50 at once or 100 or more at once. If you are administering to participants in a program that's being run by a nonprofit or government agency, then it's $35 for one assessment. And for educators, like we had talked about with Paul's situation, it would be $25 per assessment.
What other questions do you have?
I've got another one if somebody else doesn't.
Go for it.
I've spent a lot of time with various instruments, and I think students generally enjoy this sort of thing. One of the themes that you see a lot that's included in this one is the theme of there's no right or wrong way to be. And another one of my favorite instruments that I used for years was Herman brain dominance. And one of the messages there was, this is about preference, not about ability. And it seems to me that the EMP instrument is not making that statement. This is about, at least some of the dimensions are about your ability. And you mentioned a pre-post, so that, the goal might be to increase my ability in, let's say, idea generation or any number of the other ones.
Yeah, so it is a strengths-based model, and the evidence illustrates that each of these 14 can be developed with intention. The 7 skill-based are more responsive, more easier for somebody to get quick shifts. But strengths-based, the belief and evidence that these are accessible to people who choose to develop in any of these areas.
Paul, I'll elaborate in terms of with the students. A lot of our educator practitioners will use the assessments throughout the semester in a variety of ways, but one of them is doing this reveal and prediction technique where you're showing the students their 14 scales that the EMP measures and having them identify a goal or a challenge, and then looking at that list and picking 1 or 2 that are going to be relevant to that goal or challenge. So then they can make, let me just
I took care of it.
mute the person. Okay, thank you, Maggie.
Okay.
Then the students, when they get their results back, will already be honed in on the 1 or 2 scales that they've identified. So they're not influenced by where they see highs and lows. And it then gives you the ability throughout the semester to try working on moving the needle using the development guide, as well as your teachings in the classroom or other activities. But then it can be a very focused action plan. And there is a section in the back for action planning for both individuals and groups. What else can we answer for the folks who are online with us?
I've got one more.
Of course, that's why we're here.
This is my toughest one, I think. I spent the early part of my career, in the PhD world, research and all that. And the latter part, 3/4 of it or more, has been just working with students and, helping them to try to launch ventures. So going back to that research world, there's no study, no instrument that's perfect, right? And you have a lot of people who devote their whole life to doing research and critiquing other people's research. What are the biggest critiques of this instrument? What are its weaknesses? What are people, the research technicians, concerned about on this?
I can jump in, Maggie, and go first. I think that the lack of a 360 version of the entrepreneurial mindset profile, in the sense that the EMP is a self-assessment, right? So at the end of the day, it's still the assessment taker who is answering and providing insight based on how they see themselves and whatever feedback they may have received over the years. But there have been requests for a 360, so you could have raters, for example, or people who are your superior or direct reports. Our sister instrument that the Leadership Development Institute at Eckerd College developed, called the Conflict Dynamics Profile, the CDP, that does come in both an individual and a 360 format. But that would be my answer to your question, Paul, is that we only have the individual for the EMP.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't have anything to add. I hope you will read the article, the published journal article, Paul, and will be interested in your thoughts once you've done that as well.
I see something in the chat. Oh, just a thumbs up. All right. Any other questions? Well, then thank you very much for joining us today. We hope to see you in an upcoming certification workshop. If you do go ahead and fill out that certification application online, what will happen is we'll send you an invoice. And then once that invoice is paid, we'll provide you with the pre-workshop materials. So you'll get your copy of the practitioner manual. You'll get a link to take the EMP for yourself, some other forms. And then we'll see you in that 3-hour, 45-minute certification workshop where we've got folks from all over the world joining us over Zoom. Then following the certification workshop, you get to take the practitioner portal for a test drive. You will be administering a trial EMP to an unsuspecting friend, family member, or colleague. So you get the feel of it. And there's a little bit more reading to do. You'll learn a little bit and be able to watch some videos in terms of feedback sessions. And then it all culminates in a 30-minute session with the Leadership Development Institute staff member to just do a knowledge check, make sure you're comfortable, and then you're certified and able to use the instrument. So we hope to see you soon.
Yes, thank you so much for being here today.
Have a good day.